Hello all my yarny friends, I'm Sara Sach and welcome back to my crochet channel. Today's video I'm going to show you how to make this back scrubber. And it's our third pattern in our series for our Pamper Us or self-care crochet pattern series. The first pattern was this really cute and sweet washcloth. Then we made the headband, and today we're going to show you how to make the back scrubber, and it works great on your neck as well. All right, it measures about 16 inches long. It's very stretchy, and it's about 4 inches wide with the trim. One thing I did want to mention, the handles, the loops in them, if they're too small for you, I like them this size myself because it fits right through my fingers. But if you want that bigger, you can just chain more chains and make that loop bigger. All right? All right, so this is pattern number 3, the back scrubber in our Pamper Us series. Oh, and don't forget, the complete pattern is on the blog. You can find that link down in the notes underneath this video, as well as the links for the washcloth and the headband. To make our Pamper Us back scrubber, you're going to need about 2 ounces of your main color and about 1 ounce of your trim color. I'm doing the main portion in this ombre. It's called Potpourri Ombre. It's by Sugar and Cream, 100% cotton. And then I'm using this Yarn Bee Cotton Linen. And this is a mixture of cotton and linen. And I'm using this for the trim. They're both medium weight number 4 yarns. You can use any medium weight number 4 cotton yarn that you have on hand. I'm sticking with the colors to match all of my Pamper Us series. So you need about 2 ounces of your main color and about 1 ounce of your trim color. We're going to be stitching today with our H hook, 5.0 millimeter crochet hook. You need a needle for weaving in ends and then your scissors. So I have my main color. I'm going to start with the slip knot and chain 2. 1, 2. Now in the second chain from the hook, we're going to stitch 3 single crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Now we're going to chain 1, and our chain 1 on this entire project does not count as a stitch. We're going to turn our work, and in the first single crochet we're going to stitch 2 single crochets. 1, 2. In that middle one we're just going to stitch 1 single crochet, and then in that last single crochet we're going to stitch 2 single crochets. 1 and 2. So the first row we had 3, and the second row we have 5 single crochets. We're going to chain 1 and turn our work. We're going to stitch 2 single crochets in the first one. 1, 2. Then we'll stitch 1 single crochet in the next 3. 1, 2, 3. That leaves 1 single crochet left, and we'll stitch 2 single crochets in that last single crochet. 1 and 2, and chain 1. So now we've increased to 7 single crochets. Chain 1 and turn. 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets in that first stitch. Then we'll stitch 1 single crochet in each of the single crochets across until we reach that last single crochet. And then in the last single crochet, we'll stitch 1 and 2 and chain 1. So you can see we've increased by 2 every row, 1 at the beginning and 1 at the end. And so now on row 4, we have 9 single crochets. We've chained 1, we're going to turn. We're again going to stitch 2 single crochets in our first stitch. 1 and 2. We'll single crochet across till we reach that last single crochet. And then we'll stitch 2 single crochets in that last stitch. 1 and 2. And chain 1. And so now for row 5 we have 11 single crochets, and we're going to increase for 1 more row. So chain 1 and turn, 2 single crochets in the first, 1 and 2. Now we'll single crochet in each stitch across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then here's our last stitch, and we'll stitch 2 single crochets. There's 1 and 2 and chain 1. And this is forming the bottom of our back scrubber into a point. And so we're on row 6 now, and on row 6 we have 13 single crochets, and we're not going to increase anymore. Now for row 7, we've chained 1, we're going to turn our work, and we're just going to stitch 1 single crochet in each of those 13 single crochets across. 1 single crochet, no more increasing, in each of the single crochets across. So for row 7, we again have 13 single crochets. Chain 1 and turn. Now on this row, we're going to begin our back loop only stitches. And so we're still going to stitch 1 single crochet in each stitch, but we're going to be stitching in the back loops only in order to form those ridges up the back of our back scratcher and scrubber so that we can, get the dirt off our backs. All right, so you can see on the top here, your row of stitches. You have loops on this side and loops on this side. The loops here that are facing you are your front loops. We're going to be stitching in the facing away loops, which are the back loops. So we'll go right in that first back loop and stitch a single crochet. And we'll go in the next. 1 single crochet in each single crochet, working in the back loops only. And you'll know you're doing it correctly if you see this little ridge here forming. Those are the loops we didn't stitch in. And again, you'll have 13 stitches. Now for row 8, we have 13 single crochets. We stitched them in the back loop only, and you can see this ridge that comes all the way across. We're going to chain 1 and turn. And now we're going to repeat row 8. You'll stitch a single crochet in each of the back loops, working all, there we go, working all the way across. 1 single crochet in each single crochet, working in the back loops only. And again, this is forming those ridges, so we can use this on our back. It works great on your neck as well. There's my 13th stitch. Chain 1. All right, so there's that ridge, and you'll also notice there's an indentation on this side. And when you turn it over to the front, you have an indentation right there. And that's the way that this pattern works. And so what you're going to do is continue to repeat row 8 for 35 more rows in order to make the back of our back scrubber or scratcher. All right, so you'll continue, chain 1, 1 single crochet in each stitch across, working in the back loops only, and you'll continue this for 35 more rows. I repeated row 8 for 35 more rows, and that brings me up to row 44. Now, this is the length that I like. It's going to measure about 16 inches long once we put this other end on and the trim. If you want a longer back scrubber, you can add more rows of these rows in here of our repeating of row 8 if you need a longer back scrubber, okay? For a man, I would probably add a few more rows because they're typically taller than us ladies. But really it doesn't matter, because once we put the handles on, you'll be able to move it around and scrub your neck and your back with no problem. All right, so now we're going to add the other end, and we're going to be decreasing in order to form a point like this on this end. So now what we're going to do before we start decreasing, for the next 2 rows, we're going to just stitch 1 single crochet in each of the single crochets across. We're not going to stitch in the back loops only. So I'm stitching 1 single crochet in each of the single crochets across. I'll chain 1 and turn and repeat for 2 rows of just regular single crochets. I stitched those 2 rows of regular single crochet, chain 1 and turn. And now we're going to start our decrease. So we're going to stitch the first 2 single crochets together. So we'll go in the first stitch and pull up a loop. We'll go in the next stitch and pull up a loop. Yarn over and go through all 3 of those loops. So we took the first 2 single crochets and made it into 1. All right, and now we'll just stitch across till we reach those last 2 single crochets, and we'll stitch the last 2 together. That's called a single crochet decrease, or stitching 2 single crochets together. All right, so here's my last 2 stitches, and I'm going to stitch them together in a single crochet decrease. Chain 1 and turn. So now we have only 11 stitches instead of 13. And now we're going to decrease again at the beginning and end of this row. Okay, here's my last 2 stitches. So we'll stitch the last 2 single crochets together in a single crochet decrease. So we went from 13 to 11 to 9. And see how that's starting to go in and form that point? Let's keep going with our decreases at the beginning and end of our rows. So we'll decrease or stitch the first 2 single crochets together. Then we'll stitch single crochets across till we reach that last 2 single crochet stitches. And we'll stitch those last 2 single crochet stitches together. chain 1, and turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches. Now we'll do that again. Decrease with the last 2, chain 1, and now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Turn again, stitch the first 2 together, 1 single crochet, stitch the last 2 together, chain 1, and turn. This brings us to our last 3 stitches, and we're going to be stitching these last 3 stitches together. All right, so we'll go in, pull up a loop, go in the next one, pull up a loop, and go in the third one, and pull up a loop. You'll have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over and go through all 4 of those loops. So we stitched the last 3 together. All right, so now what we're going to do is cut our yarn, and we'll go ahead and chain 1. All right, so this is how your back scrubber should look at this point. We started with 3, we increased to 13, then we stitched our back loop only rows, then we went from 13 back down to 3. And we left our loop attached there. We didn't tie that off just yet because we're going to bring in our color 2. We're going to form the trim and the handles. So I've got my second color. I'm going to join it here to this single crochet. Those out of the way there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to evenly single crochet down the side of our scrubber. All right, so we're going to go right in the sides of those stitches, and the best way to have it look nice is to try to stitch in the stitch itself and not the hole, those sides of the stitches. You may have to work your hook in a little bit to get to some of those, but it makes it worth it in the end. The other thing about this scratcher is you want to try to stitch a little bit looser than you would maybe down the side of a blanket or a hot pad, because you want this to have a little bit of stretch. And so we're just trimming it off with single crochets evenly stitched down the side. And see how I'm kind of working that in, trying to find spots that are not holes. Now there might be a spot or two where you have to put it in a small hole, but that's okay. Just try your best to make it look pretty and even. But remember, we're going to stitch this just a little bit loose so it still has a little bit of stretch so we can use it comfortably. When you get down here to these rows where we did all those back loops, we want to keep the stretch in that, okay? And so what I do is I put 1 single crochet in the ridge and then 1 in the side stitch of the indentation. And again, I'm stitching just a little bit loose, not as tight as I usually would. All right, and see how that looks? And I'm going to do this all the way down till I reach the point, and I'll show you what to do when you get to the point. We started down here, and I evenly single crocheted over, and then down the side, again, stitching just a little bit loose so I can keep that stretch, and then I stitched up to the point. We're going to put the first handle on, so we're going to chain 30 chains. I've chained 30 chains, and what we're going to do is we're going to skip the first 20 and join to that next stitch. So the best way to do that is just to count up 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we're going to join to the 10th stitch. And this is going to leave a handle. Now, if you want a bigger handle, you certainly can have one. Make your chain a little longer to make your loop bigger. I like this size for me. And what we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch in those last stitches back to the back scrubber. All right, so I've slip stitched back. I have a nice size handle. And again, we chained 30. If you want your loop bigger, chain 40 and then stitch in the last 10, and that'll give you an even bigger loop. It just depends on your hand size. All right, so we're going to single crochet right in the end where we stitched that last single crochet. And then we're just going to work our way back down the other side of our scrubber to the other point. And when we get to the other point, we're going to add another handle. All right. So there's our first handle. And now we're going to evenly single crochet all the way down to this other point. So here's our first handle. And then I stitch down this other side. And we're to the other point, and we're just going to repeat what we did for the first handle. We're going to chain 30, we're going to slip stitch in the last 10 and join back. I chained 30, I slip stitched in the first 10. Now I'm going to single crochet in that stitch. Oh, I'm on a string, there we go. And we're done, so I'm going to cut my yarn and tie off. All right, so I'm going to go into that next loop and pull that loop to the back. So we have a nice looking finish. There we go, and I can just tie that off to the back. I have a few I need to weave in here and on this other end, but we're finished. And one thing I want to remind you is if you want a bigger loop on the ends on your handles, you can chain more chains and slip stitch in the last 10 and you'll have a bigger loop for your handle. So here's my completed back scrubber. It still has a little bit of stretch. It has these nice ridges on both sides, so you're going to get a nice good scrub. And although this is made for your back, it works perfect on the back of your neck as well. And it's just a really, really nice scrubber. It's not too harsh, but it's also not too gentle because it has these ridges. And it is the third pattern in our Pamper Us series. We have a nice washcloth, we have a headband, and now we have this back scrubber.